Welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast. Of course, we're talking waiver wire pickups. Did you lose Mike Williams? We got you covered with a few wide receivers and a few other pickups ahead of at least the Week 4 deadlines for a lot of people. Let's go ahead and we'll hit the music. Again, welcome everyone to the Tuesday edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast. Of course, I'm Joe Bartel. You can follow me on Twitter, JB Fantasy Sports, alongside me, as always, Jake Letarski at RotoJake. Week 3 done. Double whammy in the Monday Night Football games. Almost done. We have Week 14 to go for that.
Yes, I thought we were done with the doubleheaders, but we were reminded at HQ just before stepping in. We have one more in Week 14 that happens to feature our Packers, so a few more of these to look forward to.
Yeah, thankfully we didn't have a gruesome injury on Monday Night Football this go around. There was one pretty significant injury, but overall I think the Week 4 waiver wire is going to be a little bit tame relative to the past couple of weeks. Like we always do, I want to talk a little bit about the Monday Night Football game. So we had the dual game between Eagles, Buccaneers, and then Rams, Bengals. It's almost like the NFL gods knew this was going to be a boring evening because neither team really was scoring all that much. The Eagles come away with a pretty convincing win over Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers. And Joe Burrow, he did end up playing, suited up. The game got close, but it finally was a get-right game for Jamar Chase and that offense.
Yeah, it was get-right games for both of the top wide receivers playing Monday night. I mean, A.J. Brown technically had his best statistical game of the year, and of course Jamar Chase, had his best game of the year. And the secondary options kind of disappeared on both teams, respectively. T. Higgins was dropping balls. Devontae Smith was pretty much a non-factor. But in that first game, the Eagles were in control essentially the entire time. The Jalen Hurts QB sneak remains unstoppable, and DeAndre Swift is making the Lions front office look a little silly. The Lions whole everything looking a little silly. The other thing I wanted to note is that we were very in tune to that backfield split in Philly, right? Swift got 16 carries and Gainwell got 14, but Swift was far more effective here. So I think that's the guy that that's your guy to own, of course, and play and target either the rest of the season there. We can I'll take the L on Gainwell, but I'm willing to bet that there's going to be a couple good Gainwell games, the rest of the year. It's going to be something where they just hand the ball off and he scores twice at the goal line one of these weeks. Sure. That kind of thing will happen here. But yeah, the Eagles game was pretty one-sided for most of the way. I had here that A.J. Brown, I think, is fourth in terms of receivers in most targets without a touchdown. Can you guess number one? Number one's in our comments section. I'll give it because we don't. But it's Chris Olave. He has the most targets without a touchdown.
He almost scored a couple times against the Packers on Sunday too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's interesting. We had waiver wire darlings, both Puka Nacua from Week 1 and Kyron Williams post Week 1, that were not able to really get going against the Bengals. Puka Nacua had been injured, and there was some question maybe he was going to play, maybe not. Obviously, he did end up suiting up. It was fine. I mean, from a waiver wire pickup, which was universally available in most leagues, you're happy with the production he got in a full point PPR format, but it wasn't like the 15 targets that he got, and that's kudos a lot to the Bengals pressure that they put on. I actually put it out in the article that we posted later today, my big betting sheet where I talk about every spread. I actually think the injury to the left tackle, I want to say his name is Jackson, felt like it was as consequential as anyone for the Rams offensive line. And he was an undrafted free agent. He's been around for 3 years now for the Rams, but that looked – the Rams offensive line looked really bad. Note Bloom, I forget, also left that game at certain portions too. But the Bengals defense was able to pin its ears back and go crazy on Matthew Stafford.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Stafford's getting less and less elusive with every single year, and he definitely took a beating in the second half. And, it's also, of course, you got to note that Kyron Williams really didn't have anything going for him, and it's going to be tough to get things going behind that offense. Yeah, behind that offensive line.
Important because Cam Akers was traded last time we did this podcast, so now it was Kyron Williams getting almost all the snaps last night.
Yeah, I think he got 100% of running back snaps. I think I saw something like that. I don't know if the official ones are out yet. But yeah, and then I guess you got to touch on, Nacua was hurt. You mentioned Tutu Atwell had a pretty decent game. He also had a 22-yard run early in the game, so that's something to notice. that's someone. I mean, do you see him having value when Cooper Kupp comes back?
Yeah, we're on that marker, right? Because we have Alvin Kamara coming back. So what does that mean for the Saints backfield? And Kupp next week would be eligible to return for the Rams. I think it's Van Jefferson that gets bumped out of the equation. You can't remove Nakua from that rotation. I think it's Tutu Atwell still from a speed threat. So it's Van Jefferson who's been just a complete goose egg for that offense for most of the season to start. Yeah, I think there's value. I think Tutu Atwell remains, especially in 12-team leagues, a flex or wide receiver 3 if the Rams defense continues to yield points or yields yardage and makes Matthew Stafford and company have to pass the way they have the past couple weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I had for notes on those games.
Yeah, I didn't have too much either. Again, going back to the regular scheduled programming for Monday Night Football starting next week. I know in the chat section we're already getting plenty of comments about Mike Williams. What does that mean? Who's the top waiver wire pickup? We are going to have a debate. It's a bare-knuckle brawl between Jake and I as to which Chargers receiver you want to pick up off the waiver wire. We're going to get to that, though, a little bit later. While we were willing to shake up the rotation of sorts, talk about the Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford thing, which kudos to us, Jake. I think we did call that despite a lot of heavy, I don't want to say criticism, but doubt regarding the Kareem Hunt signing, which got reported later on last week. We're going to have a difference of opinion, I think, on the Chargers receivers. We're going to talk quarterback first, and I think that's important because we had the Derek Carr injury. Anthony Richardson didn't play last week. What does that mean? And it's going to be a tricky spot because we have bye week starting next week. There are teams that could be playing things a little bit safe regarding their star quarterbacks, Panthers, for example, as well, too. But we should talk C.J. Stroud, who I have seen become, it feels like one of the hottest commodities this week. Like if you were somebody that's got a struggling quarterback, let's say Dak Prescott, or if you had the Aaron Rodgers of the world, C.J. Stroud has become universally, I think, a really interesting pickup. But I am concerned about the matchup this week with the Steelers.
Yeah. The Steelers are, so we're 3 weeks in now, so I officially am calling this my time that I can start citing defense versus position stats, right?
Yes.
And Steelers are actually 18 against opposing quarterbacks, but no, Stroud has been very solid so far. He hasn't thrown a pick yet in his first 3 games. I don't know what the rookie record is for that, but that's strong. And now he's got 2 touchdowns in back-to-back games. Not using his legs a ton, but a tiny boost there. But no, he's been solid, and he's got Pittsburgh. Then he's at Atlanta versus New Orleans is tough and into the bye. So it's a little bit tough of a short-term schedule. But you're right. If your quarterback's not cutting it for you, then that could be an option. Who outside of your 2 quarterback leagues should be readily available. He's only 20% rostered on Yahoo, so that is the guy in your single quarterback leagues. It's not like if you drafted Derek Carr, you drafted him as a backup. Aaron Rodgers likely the similar situation. I'm starting, as good as Kirk Cousins has been, I'm starting to worry about I'm the top scorer in Stake League right now because of the Cousins-Jefferson combo, but I'm starting to worry what happens when that team throws the towel in, or does Cousins go on the move, or what happens now. So there are some quarterbacks that you could be rostering that you don't feel so great about, that go ahead, grab the rookie and see what happens.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So the chat asked about Geno Smith. They're running to drop Geno Smith. He plays the Giants this week, Monday Night Football, for C.J. Stroud. It's almost like we're just ignoring he's a rookie and an Ohio State rookie, nevertheless. And I don't really buy this college can't develop QBs, blah, 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 blah. Oh, Fields came from Ohio State, so that's why he sucks, right? It's a different person, different scheme, different system every single time. But rookies, they don't hit walls per se, but there are going to be fluctuations. And it's almost like people are assuming Stroud is automatically just going to be consistent 250 and 2 touchdowns with no turnovers. It doesn't work that way. I'm not concerned. Stroud certainly looks like he's got a lot of potential. And of this class of rookies, I think it's Stroud and Anthony Richardson by far that look like the best quarterbacks. And Richardson's already missed 1 game. But let's not act like Stroud is a lock top 12 play every single week.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not saying lock top 12, but he's definitely someone that you can look at your matchup with any other, I don't know, do you start thinking about Stroud versus Trevor Lawrence some weeks, based on the matchup?
No, again, I have a lot of Trevor Lawrence.
Oh, yeah, okay, fair enough. But I don't know, I think at the beginning of the year, we had him rated so low because we just weren't buying any of the weapons. Or the offense in general. And then all of a sudden, Nico Collins, not so much this week, but Nico Collins comes out, feasts the first 2 weeks. Tank Dell, who we're going to talk about later on, is suddenly looking like a very viable weapon. we pretty much were counting them as zeros to the start of the season. Now, I don't know if it's Stroud making them better or them helping Stroud, or probably some combination of both. But he's on the radar now. If you're in need of a quarterback.
And this is true. The last 2 weeks, the Texans have missed 4 of their projected starting offensive line. Laramie Tunsil has missed each of the past 2 games. Left tackle, obviously a stud for them. You're right, and I think in this case we are overreacting because Stroud was like quarterback 30. When in reality, we should have assumed he is better than Davis Mills by default. The Texans' offense is going to have a floor raised by default because of that quarterback difference. But I don't think it's just a guarantee that Stroud's a top 12 quarterback every single week, and we're acting as if that is the case. I know you're not, Jake, but the chat is, and other people are talking to me. Oh, man, it's the enamoring of rookies, and we're going to get to another rookie who a lot of people are enamored with, and rightfully so, when we talk running backs in a little bit too. So, yeah, I mean, so Geno Smith, we talked about. Uncle Ted asks C.J. Stroud or Deshaun Watson. I don't know. Did you watch a lot of the Browns? Because I thought last week, not single back, not being forced to play that with Nick Chubb, Deshaun Watson actually looked good. And we had talked about this last week too, that Nick Chubb's injury, while gruesome and awful for Nick Chubb, might benefit Deshaun Watson because Kevin Stefanski can't just sit in single back. He's got to go shotgun to help his quarterback. It's a really tricky spot, and I'm just worried about some rookie woes in the case of C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, no, that is fair in any situation, and I'm not saying you make him your lone quarterback. He's someone that you grab with another back-end top 15 quarterback and play matchups with, and maybe he grows into something more. And the circumstances so far, I mean, if you assume if there is any growth this rookie season, if the weapons continue to stay healthy, the offensive line gets healthy, there's definitely there's something to be had here. But you're right. I do agree that some expectations need to be tempered.
From a 2 QB perspective, and I was dealing with this a few in my Superflex leagues, I was pretty invested in Derek Carr. It appears as if that sack by Rashawn Gary had an AC joint sprain for Carr. I would assume he will not be playing for a couple of weeks. If that's the case, Jameis Winston becomes, I think, the top of the Superflex QB radar. Is that kind of what you're seeing as well too?
So here's my dilemma. In the Dynasty League, right, where everyone hoards quarterbacks, my only starter was Dak Prescott. And I have 4 backups just waiting for one, just in case. So now I'm in a position, do I start Jameis Winston over Dak Prescott this week? He's playing Tampa Bay 24th against opposing quarterbacks. Yeah, and of course, the revenge game narrative here. Jameis is still Jameis, right? Now, of course, obviously, we watched this entire Packer game. We were very tuned into the Packers' comeback. Jameis led a game-winning drive at the end of that game, right? Yes. The kicker just missed a 49-yard field goal, was it? Yep. Something along those lines. Jameis led a game-winning drive.
And I didn't think he looked bad in the prior drives, too. It was a little bit of pressure, a little bit of a holding penalty makes that down distance a little bit worse.
Rashawn Gary is an absolute stud, too. He's breathing down Jameis's neck. No matter, I don't know who can block Gary one-on-one. But yeah, so again, he led the game-winning drive. Didn't look bad. Passed the eye test. They got plenty of weapons. That was always the rationale for propping up Derek Carr, right? And I think Olave is starting to look like one of the best receivers in the league here. Michael Thomas is doing Michael Thomas things. He is electrifying, right? And they're about to get Kamara back. So there's a lot to like going on here. So, in terms of the 2 quarterback leagues, Winston is probably one of your top FAAB plays.
The big deal is that Kamara comes back, and I think with Derek Carr, that would actually be another element to that offense. Winston really wasn't good at that at times last year, and you go back to Tampa Bay as well. The checking down to the running back didn't happen all that often. Maybe LASIK Jameis is now more comfortable looking 5 yards instead of 50, but that's the one issue where I think Carr would help accelerate the offense, or at least benefited. I don't think there's much of a drop-off from Derek Carr to Winston, and I am a Derek Carr supporter. So I like Jameis Winston a lot. In a super flex, I think I'm going 15 to 18% if I need another quarterback, and you might, because there has been a lot of those lower tier guys that have just been knocked off the pedestals and starting spots.
Yeah, I mean, I was holding Josh Dobbs in a super flex. I was holding Tyler Huntley in a super flex. Those guys are getting cut to go ahead and make a play for Jameis this week here. What about Andy Dalton? We got to give Andy Dalton some credit this week for Carolina. I mean, obviously, neither of us ever thought super high of this Panthers team in general, but Andy Dalton went out there and and performed. I mean, he was I got the alert on my phone, picked him up in Fishbowl, was very happy I did so. What was the final line here? 34 of 58 for 361 yards and 2 touchdowns here. Now, Bryce Young is dealing with the ankle injury. The last quote I saw on him is should be back week 4 or 5. Right. So week 4 or 5, why would you say them both? You know, if it does, so this is all circumstantial, but if Bryce Young sits out week 4, and again, you know, might as well play it safe with the rookie. But if he sits out week 4, Andy Dalton gets the Vikings, who are the third worst against opposing quarterbacks. It's an amazing matchup here. The Vikings cannot defend anybody. So if it does turn out to be a week 5 return for Young, then Andy Dalton's right up there behind Jameis because, I mean, I like Winston better as an athlete. I like his weapons a lot better, but the matchup is crazy better for Dalton.
100%. I agree with you, and I wrote about in the article, I think the Panthers have to sit Bryce Young, and they can kind of safeguard this with the ankle injury. You cannot let the number 1 overall pick have his confidence tank, which I felt like was the case after that Monday night loss to the Saints. So you have Dalton in there. You can say it's an injury, yada, yada. You keep Bryce Young out. Now, the one sell to me is, well, if you are worried about the confidence issue with Bryce Young, it's essentially a T, right? We're hitting the ball off a T when you're saying the Vikings defense. Throw Bryce Young out there and have him actually look good against a defense that I think you and I could probably throw 100 yards on at this point. DJ Shark now back, I think, helped things, but Andy Dalton was the one looking for him. It wasn't Bryce Young. Adam Thielen's still around as well too. There's
what
some
was it?
aspects.
I made a note. Both of these guys are readily available in terms of FAAB.
Yes.
You know, we'll get to that in a sec. But 14 targets for Thielen, 11 for Shark. I mean, there were. That's interesting. I mean, granted, the game script was perfect for Dalton and them to be passing. They were behind the entire time.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, there's something there.
Yeah, right there with you. And then real quick, Jimmy G suffered a concussion in that loss to the Steelers. Brian Hoyer is listed as the backup. Jake, you and I are talking off air. I've had a number of people ask me about Aiden O'Connell, the preseason star for the Raiders this past preseason. Again, if you are looking for quarterbacks, I don't know how deep your league has to be where Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton are not available, but Aiden O'Connell is. I'm rostering both those guys over whatever happens out of this Raiders quarterback room.
Yep, and just another note, we didn't quite get this last Tuesday, but Anthony Richardson should be back week 4, so there's no Gardner Minshew to worry about. That's just kind of a 2-quarterback league.
Against the Rams, too. Would you play Dak Prescott or Anthony Richardson against the Rams? Prescott's against the Patriots.
They're number 4. They're one of the best against opposing quarterbacks.
They did play Zach Wilson, so that helps.
I would, so yeah, with Dak against the Patriots, I think I'm playing Jameis over Dak this week in Dynasty.
So then you're playing Jameis over Anthony Richardson too?
Or no, I'm playing Anthony Richardson over Dak as well.
Okay, all right. So you're helping my lineups out. This is good. This is what I need. We'll get to
we're in different stake leagues. We'll face each other in the Super Bowl, but not but not during the regular season.
Well, I have Trevor Lawrence in stake leagues, so I can't move off him just yet. It's the first of many London games. Just remember, Jake, you have football starting literally very early Sunday morning this week.
So Kyle Pitts can disappoint me before I even wake up.
Bingo. Yeah, you can sleepwalk through all the sadness that Kyle Pitts gives you. Exactly. Let's hit a break and a word from our sponsors, Blue Wire. Again, if you are watching live, it'll be a little bit of a second. If you're listening, get through the ads a little bit here. All right, so we're talking running back next. And obviously we had a pretty big situation last week with Jerome Ford and the Browns. We had talked about Kareem Hunt as well, too. Of course, he signed Wednesday. I mean, Kareem Hunt was a factor. We'll talk about him a little bit. But it was Jerome Ford that was that key guy in the backfield.
Exactly.
And once again, looked pretty good. If you picked up Matt Breida, he got a touchdown in that blowout loss to the Niners on Thursday night last week. That was totally fine. We'll talk about Breida as well, too, because Saquon Barkley is day-to-day right now. But who knows what his status will be. Kyron Williams, we mentioned a little bit before. Zach Moss was fantastic. Jonathan Taylor, though, looming as well. And even Tony Jones. Like, I know he split times with Kendra Miller, but if you started Tony Jones, it wasn't the worst of those guys from last week.
And you mentioned Tajay Spears last week. I think we got to mention him again this week at the bottom. But it all starts this week with De'Von Achane.
De'Von Achane, yeah. So to be clear, 41% rostered right now, so he's pretty close to our 50% threshold. I'm surprised, frankly, that that's the case. I wonder if that's incorporating those Monday pickups.
I think when someone blows up for a game like that, all the first come first serve leagues, which is I know it's definitely not the majority. FSF or FCFS is I don't see that as the fair way to do it. Most people don't, but there is a chunk of them, and I think his real roster ship, or however we want to put it, was probably around 30%, and then it just like blew up, 32-ish% maybe, and then it and then it blew up to 41%. So there's obviously he's rostered in my 12-team. 2-keeper league. He's rostered in our stake league. I actually played the guy who had him on the bench, so that was great. Shout out to Park.
Everyone had him on the bench, yeah.
yeah, everybody did, of course. So he's the guy this week. Obviously, he goes out over 200 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns. That speaks to itself. But we started to talk kind of in our pre-show conversation, and yes, I think you can make a case that he's the top pickup this week if he's out there. But it's not free of red flags completely, right? Because Raheem Mostert is still the starter, and people tend to overlook the fact that Mostert scored 4 times as well.
Right.
So, they just got the feast of a matchup there. And also, listen, Achane should take over for Salvon Ahmed, right? He should be the number 2 back at least.
Sure.
But going into this week, Salvon Ahmed was on the depth chart at number 2, and he could return. So let's just, give the Dolphins coaching staff the benefit of the doubt, and that Achane's the number 2 back now. Then we also have to think Jeff Wilson's going to come back off IR here sooner or later, within a couple of weeks here. So this is a log jam. You are happy. I think you made the perfect point, Joe. Not to steal your thunder, but you're happy with Achane is a best ball type player, right? But you're going to have a lot of weeks where there's nothing close to this, and everyone's going to go and rush to put him in their starting lineup this week. And I think a lot of people might be disappointed.
So it's going to be an overreaction thing. If you told me that Achane is going to face a defense that has given up on its coach through 3 weeks, every single week, well, yeah, Achane's going for 2,000. Raheem Mostert's going to be the MVP. There's going to be a lot of different situations where you want to have Achane. But that's not the case. So, for example, Bills-Dolphins this week, really critical AFC East matchup. The Dolphins obviously annihilated the Broncos, but in the same instance, the Bills have kicked the Raiders and Commanders' butt in back-to-back weeks, and the Commanders were undefeated, or I think they were at least undefeated, entering this week.
We were starting to hype up Howell for a little while there.
Well, I still like Howell, but this was a bad game for him. I'm just going to the point where I'm not even playing Achane this week if I pick him up, much less trying to go ahead and get him. So people are going to overreact and act like this. Oh, he got 200-plus yards. He ran 28 miles per hour, whatever weird next-gen stats can be thrown out
all
there.
Those tweets send the Dolphins to the Olympics,
Look how fast they are. It's like, no, it just dial it down on this. If I'm picking up Achane, it's to be the backup to Raheem Mostert if and when Raheem Mostert gets injured, then Achane is in your starting lineup moving forward. But Mostert looks great. You point out the 4 touchdowns. He had tons of yards. Jeff Wilson might not be back for another month. But the only way that Achane is going to get and make what I think a lot of people are going to overreact to on the waiver wire is if he's the starter. And at least for next week, that's not the case.
Yeah,
real
so
quick, Jake. I'm sorry, real quick.
You want to hit the Tyler question
Yes,
first?
I want to thank Tyler. This is the first time we've had this.
Exactly, yeah. So shout out to Tyler.
You get to send out money to us now when we are great. And
exactly.
It's Start
I know
Waddle
the
when
privileges
healthy.
of everyone who like, listen, subscribe. So thanks, guys. But anyway, go ahead. Put it on the screen.
Start Waddle when healthy. So he had the concussion. It sounded like he was trending towards playing because he was a limited participant last Friday. Ended up getting ruled out Saturday. Or Pittman. So Michael Pittman against the Rams or Waddle against the Bills, provided he's healthy. So that's the first one, Jake. What do you have there?
I think I'm going Waddle.
I am going that too. The over-under, by the way, is the highest on the Week 4 slate between the Dolphins and Bills by like 8 points. Or no, I think it's by like 4 or 5. So I will play Waddle. I agree with you on that one. And then Jared Goff against the Packers or Jordan Love against the Lions. If they don't feel confident playing Burrow. I would play Burrow, but I understand talking about that question now.
Yeah, so I got to check. I mean, Burrow doesn't look 100%, and he's playing the Titans.
Yep.
So I could absolutely see a case,
I'm playing Burrow because the Titans' run defense is so great. The pass defense is non-existent. It's just horrible. But I recognize if you're a little bit scared, Jared Goff would be my next call.
Yep. Yeah, I think I agree with Burrow. And then, I mean, if Jair Alexander's back, does that change anything for you?
No.
Jair's there to cover.
Joe Barry is still the defense coordinator, so no.
Fair enough. I'm gonna do this game's at Lambeau, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's their Thursday night game.
Yeah. Ooh. Give me Jordan Love.
I like this. We were talking Achane. Retrograde says Achane's talent is going to win out, as if Raheem Mostert doesn't have talent. I mean, like, Mostert is also really good. He was really good every single time he's been healthy, dating back to the 49ers.
Mostert isn't slow either.
He gets hurt so often. So if you're picking up Achane, you're doing so because you're acquiring a talented backup that could go nuclear in the right situation.
Okay, so here's one point I want to make in favor of Achane, though, because I hadn't looked at the schedule right beforehand. So obviously tough matchup against the Bills this week. Then he gets the Giants, and then he gets the Panthers, who are 28-30 against running backs in standard formats and PPR as well, at least if this feature is working properly on the site here. So also Giants and Panthers, those are games that could be blowouts, not to the degree Denver was, the record-setting blowout, but these are blowups in which the backup's going to get double-digit touches, right? Yep. So, what's going to happen is people are going to put Achane in the lineup, or Achane in the lineup this week. They're going to get frustrated. They're going to take him out of the lineup, and then he's going to blow up against the Giants. So please stay consistent in whatever we're doing here, folks.
100% possible. Again, I just want to be clear and reiterate what I think you and I are both saying, Jake. De'Von Achane is a really good player. I'm not disagreeing with that. I think in large part we didn't see this yet because Achane was injured during the preseason. I think missed week 1 or was like close to being ready and then didn't really do a whole lot. Mm-hmm. The Dolphins are bringing along him slowly, but there's still the Raheem Mostert factor, and he is going to continue being a factor for that offense until he gets injured. You might answer that question, well, yeah, Joe, he is going to get injured. He gets injured every year. That's fine. You can absolutely do that. I'm not disagreeing. But it's not like Achane is outplaying or taking away Mostert snaps, at least not right now. There's been no reason to, with how great Mostert has looked for that Dolphins offense as well, too.
Yeah, so, and just to summarize here, Achane was only out on the field for 42.3% of offensive snaps, so the role's definitely growing, and Mostert was at 50.7%.
And how much of that came, I would want to know, and I know that next-gen stats don't tell us this, but in the second half, when the game was already out of hand, I think that's kind of the key part.
All right, so here, I'm gonna read from Jerry's fabulous box score article here. Prior to the fourth quarter, Raheem Mostert played 65% of snaps and took 20 opportunities for 143 yards and 4 touchdowns. That was prior to the fourth quarter here. Achane, meanwhile, played 46% of snaps and took 18 receptions.
No, not 18 receptions.
Or 18 opportunities, sorry. Yeah, I'm reading this wrong. But anyway, Mostert, okay, so neither Mostert nor Tyreek Hill played at all in the fourth quarter of that game, right? Yep. So, again, it's not the magical narrative that you think it is. So what it boils down to here, are we spending more on Achane than we were on Jerome Ford last week?
No.
Okay, so last week we had 35 minimum keep him honest bid for Jerome Ford, right? What's your minimum keep him honest bid for Achane, and how high are we really willing to go? Because I think what you said, half. I think minimum you got to throw 17 if he's out there. Someone's going to overpay for him.
I went 11 on Tony Jones last week because I needed a running back to start, and that was fine. Maybe a little bit of overpay. I think I got Matt Breida in Stake League for 17 or 18, thinking he's going to be a couple week starter. We can talk about that a little bit later on.
Yep.
Also fine with that too. So if you're putting higher than 20 on Achane, it's with the understanding you are going to sit on that for a while. He is not going to be immediate start next week and rip off another 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's just not going to happen.
If you love your running backs and you don't need Achane, you still put 17 down, right?
I think I would go higher than Tony Jones like I did last week. Yeah. So I would go like
you put
12.
17 minimum down just to keep the rest of your league honest, right? And then
there's certain situations. It's tough.
If you're a Mostert owner and he's out there.
Yes.
That's a $42 bid for me, right? If you're a Mostert owner and he's out there, you need to make sure you get him for your inevitable situation.
I think so tough to go half your budget. Let's just say you have $100 to go half your budget on a backup is really tricky. Like you could have gotten Jerome Ford for really cheap. Zach Charbonnet, same thing for Kenneth Walker, and you're not having to pay half your free agent budget. I guess that's the punishment for not being savvy and on point with that. Maybe 30, 35. Somebody's going to make you do it. After this week, but I'm just trying to caution people right now.
But let's give it. There's going to be someone in this league who's going in most leagues, right? that is going to see that kind of crazy explosion game and just throw an $82 bid out on him, right? That's going to happen in some leagues. There's no doubt about that. I would advise letting somebody else do that and sticking to your reasonable, keep them honest bids, because there will be more Achanes this year.
There will be, yes. And again, I go back to, if you needed a running back, Tony Jones was totally fine. 7 or 8 points, but
I don't think he'll be fine anymore with Kamara back.
No. And I'm cutting him actually for a bunch of the receivers that we're going to talk about a little bit later on.
Yeah,
but it was
even though Jamal Williams is on IR, now
Kendra Miller came back healthy. That was kind of the big deal.
Yeah, so now it's Jones. He's got to contend with Kendra Miller and now Kamara. I'm not so sure.
We've spent a lot of time on Achane. I hope that in future weeks we can talk about it again, because that means he's going off, or that Raheem Mostert got injured. But until that point happens, I'm not super aggressive. Also, I would imagine a lot of people are going to recommend going behind him.
Also, the rest of these running backs are kind of quick hitter situations. I don't think any of these other backs need more than 30 seconds to really run through them all. I don't know if anyone stood out to you, but we're ready to move on from Achane. I put down Ezekiel Elliott because he's only 43% rostered on Yahoo. He got 16 carries for 80 yards against the Jets run D that I respect a lot. I think that defense is never going to be the problem on that Jets team. And that was interesting to me. I mean, I still obviously love Ramondre over Zeke by a mile rest of season, but the usage is interesting.
Yeah, another revenge game. Patriots play the Cowboys this week. So I definitely think if I could do an anytime touchdown for Zeke, the Patriots, provided they can move the ball, will give him a position to do so.
I do like that.
Yeah.
Is it at New England or at Dallas?
It's at Dallas, yeah.
Oh, so he can jump in the Salvation Army thing, or they still let him do that?
I mean, I feel very confident that you're going to get some sort of possible revenge game part. Week 4 is all about revenge games, I guess. That being said, I think Ramondre Stevenson is a really talented player, and I would imagine if you're saying Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, and that entire pass rush is coming at me, Mac Jones better be checking down the ball a lot to Ramondre, not necessarily Ezekiel Elliott. So
absolutely,
I don't think that 80 yards, that might be a season high for him. I liked the call in terms of Melvin Gordon and the Ravens backfield. So it's important to note because Justice Hill did not play. It was a toe. I think it was turf toe.
Was it turf toe? I thought it was. I just read.
It was a foot. Because you wrote in our notes that Justice Hill might return. I don't know if that's the case. Actually, I thought there's a little pessimism in regards to returning next week against the Browns, or I guess this week.
Yeah.
But either way, that would mean Dobbins done for the year. Hill with that foot injury, Gus Edwards left with a concussion.
We should have led with that. That's why this changes, and we're talking about Baltimore again, is that Gus Edwards is in concussion protocol. So, now we're looking at Melvin Gordon or Kenyon Drake, and I mean, when it comes down to the two of them, I know a couple weeks ago we weren't even interested in Melvin Gordon, but it's a last man standing situation here. He is one of the guys you do your backup bids if you need a starting running back this week.
He's the Tony Jones, I think, of this group. Yeah,
he's the Tony Jones, like $11 max if you really need him. $3 backup to your other targets probably. For the most part.
Again, Kareem Hunt, when he signed on Wednesday of last week, ended up being hugely popular. Ceded a lot of time to Jerome Ford. I think some people are going to say, "Oh, that's just because they're getting back Kareem Hunt in game shape." Blah blah blah. No, it's because Jerome Ford is actually good, and I think so long as he's healthy, he's going to be in that starting lineup for the Browns. Moving forward,
Kareem Hunt got up to 72%. So most people grabbed him.
A little too high for me.
Yeah, most people grabbed him after he signed and after waivers processed in a first come first serve situation there. So that that's why the ownership is what it is. I'm not if he's out there. I mean, sure, I put him on. Do I put him on my list? Sure, but it depends who you're dropping for him.
Absolutely.
And there are you're gonna have to be hard pressed to give me someone to drop here. I wrote down Rico Dowdle. This is more of a stash candidate. He had 4 rushes for 21 yards. He also caught 3 targets for 25 and a score. I know there was some Deuce Vaughn talk earlier in the preseason, but Dowdle is the backup here. So if you are trying to handcuff Pollard, or you're in a super deep league, because Dowdle's only 1% owned, where you try to stash these guys, that's the backup, and he's on the radar there.
Yeah, it's tough. I always say I'm a disciple of Mario Puig and John McKechnie, and they think Rico Dowdle is shouldn't be in the NFL, that low of a talent. And normally those guys, when they have that strong of a take, are never wrong. So I don't really trust that Dowdle is going to be a factor moving forward. Like if Pollard
he needs an injury to be a factor, basically.
Well, if Pollard were to get injured, I don't even know if that's going to be the case. I would sooner assume the Cowboys trade for a running back or sign Leonard Fournette off of free agency. And I think Fournette, unlike Kareem Hunt, will be better than the backup options the Cowboys have. So
Yep.
it is absolutely worth mentioning, especially in like a 12-team league, deep roster spaces. You should speculate on it, but it does feel it's like a speculative ad for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had talked about Tajay Spears last week. Once again, pretty critical playing time factor over Derrick Henry.
So this turf toe is clearly bothering Henry, right?
I think so. I think that's possible.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of the situation because the Titans want to pound the rock and they just haven't been doing that. Tajay Spears is only 24% rostered on Yahoo, and he actually outsnapped Derrick Henry this week. He was on the field for 55.6% of snaps compared to 37.8% for Henry. Now, Henry is a kind of a notorious slow starter in fantasy. He has your big weeks in 12 through 16. So maybe that's part of it too. But yeah, Tajay Spears is only 24% rostered. If you're just looking to improve your roster, you improve your last bench spot, but don't need a starter this week, then Spears is definitely on the radar.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I like Spears' long-term outlook way more than Melvin Gordon, more than Dowdle, more than Kareem Hunt even, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. So people are in on Jaylen Warren, Steelers backup running back kind of to Najee Harris, and rightfully so. The Titans offense is just like really bad, way worse than the Steelers, and I don't like Kenny Pickett, but it's the same concept. Yeah. So if you're having a hard time figuring out what Tajay Spears is to the Titans right now, it's like Jaylen Warren, but possibly even more effective, given what Spears has done and that the Titans have called plays for him back in week 1 and week 2. I like
Warren
Spears
is 55% rostered, so he's definitely not there. And Warren was 43.3% of the snaps last week, and Harris was up at 51.7%. So the rostership numbers for Warren and Spears should probably be flipped in my eyes.
Warren's fine. I'm not having an issue with him being rostered to that extent. I think Tajay Spears should just be higher. If 72% of the people believed Kareem Hunt was an asset, then Tajay Spears needs to be included in that. That's where I'm at. You had mentioned Deion Jackson in the outlook as a drop. 100%. I am dropping him everywhere.
I think I just forgot to delete that from last week, but because I don't remember
he
drops,
got literally.
He actually got literally cut by his team.
So it's worth pointing out. Jonathan Taylor again could be back as soon as next week. I'm also dropping Tony Jones. We'd recommended him last week. Yep. There's no point now with Kamara and Kendra Miller healthy, even with Jamal Williams on injury reserve, for you to have Jones on your roster.
Yeah, he can absolutely go. We mentioned Deontay Foreman's out last week. Singletary's been a steady drop for us, but he actually had a decent game. Same thing with Latavius Murray,
Yeah, and the Damian Harris, the Bills guys, Cool. I want to get to a few of our sponsors here. We'll start first with Bettor Vision. I think we can all agree that fantasy sports is awesome, and so is daily fantasy and sports betting too. That's why we have so many accounts. What's not awesome is going to a bunch of different apps to find the best odds and manage all of your fantasy lineups. Enter Bettor Vision. That's Bettor Vision. Bettor Vision is the only app that syncs all your fantasy, DFS, and sportsbook accounts in one place. They only show you the best odds for every bet, so you'll get the best value. And the dashboard is also a one-stop shop to track all of your fantasy matchups, DFS picks, and more. Visit Bettor Vision, again, Bettor Vision.us to download Bettor Vision today. I also want to get a word from our sponsors here, Rival Fantasy. If you're looking for a place to play head-to-head fantasy football games without huge tournaments, salary caps, or complicated game types, then Rival Fantasy is where you want to play this NFL season. From a twist on a classic game with Fantasy Bingo, where players generate a lamp to complete achievements to get bingo, and also to a head-to-head fantasy challenges where you pick which of two players will score more fantasy points. Rival Fantasy is the best version of fantasy sports. From the 2023 NFL season, Rival Fantasy is offering new users a $200 deposit match plus a $25 first play voucher. Rival Fantasy is so confident you'll love the experience. They're giving you money to play right out of the gate. Experience the future of fantasy sports on Rival Fantasy and become a rival today. All right, Henry Dubensky is asking what percentage FAAB to place on Josh Palmer and Quentin, with Quentin Johnston already gone. This is the marquee free agent for me, Jake, this week. It's the Chargers duo of receivers. I had teased at the top of the show, we're going to get a bare knuckle brawl as to which one we want more. And I'm going to tell you right now, it is not Josh Palmer. So do you want to give the leeway into why you think Josh Palmer is the immediate pickup over Quentin Johnston?
I think it's Josh Palmer because he's already producing. If you need to replace Mike Williams right away this week, I'm getting the guy that was on the field for 61% of snaps and ran 33 routes over the guy that was only on the field for a quarter of the snaps and just ran 13 routes. Now, I know the point you're going to make is that Quentin Johnston has more room to grow with Mike Williams out, but it seems that Josh Palmer has already well beaten him out for the wide receiver 3 role beforehand. And even both the tight ends are on the field for more snaps than Quentin Johnston. Yeah. Quentin Johnston, I think, is still developing. He's still a little bit of a work in progress. And he'll be a good long-term ad, right? And I think more people are actually, I don't know. I think my gut says Palmer is going to be the more popular play, and you might be able to slide Quentin Johnston under the radar. But the thing is the ownership. Quentin Johnston has higher ownership because
he was being drafted as a first. I mean, he was a 7th round pick, but been very disappointing to date.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
exactly.
took him mistakenly, in the Beat Joe Bartel Online Championship in the 7th round.
So Quentin Johnston is 33%, and Josh Palmer is only like 5%. So so I'm going with the guy that's already getting usage, and I think yes, Quentin Johnston will see more snaps with Mike Williams out, but Palmer should also see more targets. And I don't know if targeting Keenan Allen 20 times a game is super sustainable. Someone's going to figure out how to
defense.
Someone's going to figure out how to take that away. I mean, I'll take my 45 points from Keenan Allen every week. That would be great. Yeah, that was really the only counter to Mostert right this week. But yeah, so that was my argument for Josh Palmer, just that he is already playing, he's already running routes, and now that more targets will go to him. And if if Quentin Johnston was going to be that dude right away, I feel like he'd get a little more early usage. But I want to hear your argument for him.
So there's a lot to unpack with this. I am the Chargers beat writer at RotoWire. I've been following this along now for a while. When I saw that Mike Williams is done for the season, I immediately thought of our show a couple of years ago when we told everyone to go get Justin Jefferson. It was after week 3. Mike Zimmer was still being a butt for the Vikings, wasn't playing his rookie receiver. And we're like, no, he's just really, really good. Like, go whoever dropped Justin Jefferson, pick him up. And of course, his rookie year, he ended up being awesome. I do not think the scenarios are the same. I am concerned about Quentin Johnston's talent relative to Justin Jefferson. You're going to be like, Joe, no duh. Obviously, Jefferson already is one of the best receivers in the league. I think the beat reporters, if you kind of go back and look at stuff during training camp in the preseason, were kind of giving puff pieces a little bit to Quentin Johnston. Like, oh, look at this great deep route he ran. It's like, well, he ran straight and caught a pass over his shoulder. I think first-round receivers should be capable of doing that. And even then, he was a bit inconsistent. So there's going to be growing pains, to your point. That's why Josh Palmer has been on the field. But you're not having more growth to Josh Palmer's game. I think Mike Williams' injury happened on either the last possession or one of the last possessions for the Chargers offense. So you're not really getting to see what would have happened from a playing time perspective. They used 3 receivers almost all season long today, and Palmer was the 3rd receiver, not because he was better than Quentin Johnston, which I think he is, but because Mike Williams had a certain role, Keenan Allen had a certain role, and Josh Palmer had a certain role. Quentin Johnston is most ready and most capable of taking Mike Williams' role. A deep field stretcher, can be an intermediate pass catcher, and you can do some bubble things, which is what Mike Williams got injured on with Quentin Johnston. There's a level of athleticism that Quentin Johnston has that Palmer can't replicate, and no matter the agile route running Keenan Allen has, he can't either. Quentin Johnston is going to be a focal point in this offense because now they have to. They have to be reliant on him. I'm convinced I would be acquiring Quentin Johnston trade right now if I could. And I would be going to like 18 to 22 of a $100 budget if I need a wide receiver 3 or 4, because this feels like the similar situation with Justin Jefferson, where he is going to be a factor now by default because the Chargers offense needs Quentin Johnston to be a factor.
Yeah, so here's a fun one. Mike Williams, 6'4", 215. Quentin Johnston, 6'4", 215. Both first-round picks. There's you're right. There may be something to that. But
and like 0.2 speed faster. Like Mike Williams is a 4.6, and Quentin Johnston. I get Quentin is a 4.5, but plays faster certainly on the field than Mike Williams did.
Yep. Yeah. And, maybe some drop issues, but, that can always be worked out. Devontae Adams had drop issues.
Yeah. The Packers, just Jaden Reed as well. We had somebody in the comments talking about Jaden Reed, too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to hit that question because it's a Packer thing.
We'll get there because I think we do need to talk Jaden Reed. But
we do. We should talk
I just want to put a bow on this. So, Quentin Johnston, I'm going 18 to 22%. Palmer, I'm going 15% too, because to your point, Jake, He's going to be on the field now. There is no situation where Palmer is not playing if they go down to 2 receivers, and they do often. You mentioned the tight ends. We'll talk about Donald Parham a little bit later on. Palmer is playing over Quentin Johnston in most situations. So Palmer's going to have a role. And we saw last year when Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were banged up, Palmer was the guy. I mean, he got almost 1,000 receiving yards, and we completely forgot about it because Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are so good. I think both need to be picked up, and I have both of the Charger receivers as my 2 favorite waiver wire claims this week.
Yeah, you might have sold me on Quentin Johnston. I'm definitely going to make a pass through and see if anyone had dropped him earlier in the year and make a bid there. But so someone asked, with Johnson already gone, what's the FAAB on Palmer? I think we hit that. You said
at least 16.
15.
Yep.
Maybe this is a weird FAAB thing for me, but I always hate bidding on numbers that end in 0 or 5. I always bid.
That's what I'm saying. Going 1 or 2 over.
I was going to say 16 or 17, and a lot of times I end up bidding 17 because I think somebody's going to do 16 with the same. It's a psychological thing. Crooked numbers for FAAB.
Yeah, absolutely. We could talk about Jaden Reed here, I think. So Lee Bang asks if Christian Watson is back, and it sure seems like he could be. The broadcast, I went to the game, Jake. The leading up, the local radio is pretty good for the Packers, and they had talked about it. I was actually kind of surprised. Mm-hmm. Did the Packers choose to have Christian Watson, Aaron Jones, David Bakhtiari, and Jair Alexander all inactive for Sunday's game because they were hoping to have them for the Thursday night game against the Lions? And that the broadcast locally even brings that up is like, because you wouldn't normally say that kind of thing, that you're punting on this game against the Saints, unless
especially when it's your home opener.
Right. I was like, this is really intriguing. I anticipate at minimum Christian Watson and Aaron Jones will be back Thursday against the Lions.
We just got a note through the wire 30 seconds ago, something like that. Christian Watson, quote, plans to play Thursday.
Okay. So if and when Watson's out there, that's not going to impact Jaden Reed. It just means Dontavian Wicks, rookie 5th or 6th rounder, will not play very much, which is fine.
I think Reed will lose targets, though. They'll still do a couple gadgety plays for Reed, but he'll definitely lose targets. Because I think Dobbs earned his targets. I think Musgrave's still going to get targets.
Yeah, you're probably right, because if you say they're only going to throw 25 times and you have to throw 5 times at minimum to Watson, how much are you spacing between Dobbs and Aaron Jones gets back fixed in there too? You're right, but they were calling situational shot plays for Jaden Reed. I think those situational shot plays happen for Christian Watson, but there is a role and function to what Jaden Reed does, and I've been impressed. I don't know where you're at with him. He had a bit of drops in Sunday, but that diving catch to really extend that drive was like a okay, so he's legit. Like that was
he erased those drops instantly. Because there were some balls that he should have had there. And then to answer the Brooks question here, is Watson safe to start at flex after missing 3 weeks? When they say Watson is active, I will start him in every lineup I have him.
Okay, so that's interesting because the Lions secondary, they improved this offseason, but not significantly. I think if you're playing Christian Watson, you're hoping that Jared Goff and the Lions just beat up on the Packers defense, and there's going to have to be points a lot. I think that's going to be the case because, as everyone knows, I hate Joe Barry, the defensive coordinator for the Packers. But you might assume, Jake, that Jared Goff might struggle. He has the last 2 weeks. And Amon-Ra St. Brown had turf toe. He was dealing with that a little bit. Obviously was fine. Josh Reynolds also banged up. Like the Lions offense is missing key pieces.
Yep.
We didn't even talk about
David Montgomery too. Yeah, we didn't quite hit that.
So that would be my one concern. Watson's going to get 3 targets of 40-plus yards. Can he catch 2 of them? That's the big deal for me.
Fair enough. All right. I mean, for me, I'm not even thinking about it. I'm rolling with it. But maybe that's the homer in me a little bit. You drafted him to be your wide receiver 1 or 2. I'm not. It obviously depends what your options look like, but there are very few situations where I would actually bench Christian Watson in his return. You got to get the points out of him when he's actually out there playing.
Yeah, there's a couple other receivers besides the Chargers guys and Jaden Reed out there. Marvin Mims, who's now close to 30% rostered, of course, going to be in that stinker against the Bears. And then there's DJ Chark, who had 11 targets with Andy Dalton as quarterback. I think if you said Andy Dalton is for sure starting next week, I would say I want Chark over Marvin Mims. But Mims had the kick return touchdown. That did count in a few leagues where I had to start Mims for me. Yeah. And he is a big play threat.
He is really the only thing that offense has going. He's big play capable. I mean, Bears are number 28 against opposing receivers in PPR, 20 in standard. Mims is probably more of a standard guy because of the big plays, the air yards, the A-dot, that kind of thing. But the only thing with Mims is because, like I said, when I do this show, I looked at just about everybody's waiver wire list I can possibly find to see some names that are coming up a lot that I have a little bit of a not so fast in me. And this one, he's another one where he needs to kind of get let loose, right? He had 3 catches for 73 yards on 5 targets. Of course, the kick return TV. He was only on the field for 25.4% of snaps. And as Jerry notes in the box score column, he ran half as many routes as Brandon Johnston. So, yes, you have to imagine his role grows a little bit because of this big play capability, but how and when and how fast. Mims is more of a if you need a starter this week, it's Shark or even Thielen. Thielen's only 47% rostered, so I'd actually go out and get Thielen before Shark because he had 14 targets from Dalton. So those guys are the guys that you can actually have some confidence in starting this week. Same thing with Palmer. But Mims is more of the stash candidate this week because – if you expect Judy or Sutton to get hurt, which,
or traded,
can happen.
0-3.
Or traded, yes, or traded. Mims could eventually be the guy there. So stash if you got the room.
Yeah, I agree with you. Then there was Josh Downs, who we've talked about in past podcasts, got the 12 targets for the Colts. That was with Gardner Minshew. We're assuming Anthony Richardson is playing against the Rams. And then Michael Gallup, finally makes his appearance this season.
Right as I went as far as cutting Gallup and Fishbowl with those giant deep rosters. I cut him to get Dalton, so he's definitely going to end up getting picked up in my league again this week. And I don't know, weird game flow for the Cowboys there. I mean, the Cardinals were pretty much taking it to them for that entire game, and I don't know how often Gallup's going to be able to repeat that, but it is good to see him, do something. And then again, target watch for Josh Downs. 12 targets is far more than. When you get 12 targets, basically my spreadsheet gets a ping and you get on my sheet. It has to be mentioned.
That's fair. We probably skipped one of these guys, and I want to come back to it. It's Tank Dell. And Jonathan Gonzalez asks, should I drop Kendrick Bourne or Michael Thomas for Tank Dell? And if so, how much FAAB should I invest? So I talked about Quentin Johnston and Josh Palmer. Quentin Johnston's like an 18 to 21%. Josh Palmer is 16%. I think Tank Bell is like in the 13%, 14% range for me too. I'm scared about CJ Stroud, obviously. I'm not ready to anoint him as a guaranteed fantasy starter just yet. Nico Collins certainly is a starter. But if you are of the belief that Stroud is a good quarterback, I think Tank Dell at this point has to be included. Like, I know he's 5'6" and only 160, but the Texans are utilizing him and frequently. I know one bad hit can knock him out, but at this point, I feel like that happens for a lot of other players. Tank Dell has to be in consideration.
Yeah, so to hit the question here, I mean, I would drop Kendrick Bourne for Tank Dell.
I think I would too.
Because he is clearly wide receiver 3 with Devontae Parker back, and Kendrick Bourne's basically a part-time player that had that beautiful week 1 and is probably going to go away. I would not drop Michael Thomas for Tank Dell. I'm keeping Michael Thomas.
I agree with you. I'm sorry. Keep going.
I was like, wait a minute, you're dropping Michael Thomas for Tank Dell? I was right. Nope. Like, wait a minute, what? No, yeah. So, but yeah, I could see dropping Kendrick Bourne for Tank Dell. And how much FAAB?
I'm at 13%, like a 13.
I was going to say 12. So, all right, we're in.
Good. I'm glad we're in lockstep with that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I see a good question from AJ in Films about Derrick Henry and Brandon Ayuk. We'll get to that a little bit later towards the end of the show because I still want to talk tight ends and a few of those streamer defenses, although the tight ends not nearly as interesting as it has been in past weeks. Yeah. Before we do that, a word from our sponsors, Vivid Seats. Football, of course, it's back. Kick off the NFL season with Vivid Seats and score tickets to all the hottest matchups and biggest games of the year. Catch every pass, every tackle, and every heart-pounding play of your favorite team live and in person. And with Vivid Seat Rewards, now you earn rewards with every single purchase. Each ticket you buy gets you closer to that reward. Buy 10 tickets. Simply cash in your credit towards your 11th ticket purchase. Really is that easy. Plus, Vivid Seats is offering you $20 off your first $200 ticket purchase with promo code RotoWire. That's code ROTO Wire. From the 50-yard line to the upper deck, Vivid Seats has great tickets for all the 2023 games that matter to you. Visit vividseats.com or download the app today. So I think we have finally gotten to the point, Jake, where we can't continue to mention Zach Ertz, but he has been a popular tight end recommendation in past weeks.
He's kind of a letdown last week. Musgrave was the guy last week.
Musgrave, and he is also still only at 18% rostered. Musgrave continues to be my guy. I had mentioned pre-show before he hopped on. This is going to be the final week, I think, before you can trade for Sam Laporta. I anticipate he is going to look really good against the Packers.
See, I feel like that window is passed because he has had.
I think he's going to get like 2 touchdowns and 100 yards, kind of good game. That's
he does seem like the kind of guy that can definitely carry.
That's Darnell Savage is going to have no idea what to do when Sam Laporta goes running by. Otherwise, if you're not after Luke Musgrave, Jake Ferguson, probably the big key. And Dak Prescott from day one has said he loved Jake Ferguson. We've talked about him on a number of different podcasts now. I have been really comfortable with the Musgrave, Ferguson, Laporta trio of tight ends. And I think that's been more encouraging than the Dallas Goederts, Pat Fryermuths, Chigi Konkwus, which were like guaranteed top 12 selections earlier this year.
I'm starting to think about dangling Kelsey out there in Stake League because I'm actually I have faith in Musgrave. I really
Wow, I like that. That would be a bold call.
I mean, I started Tyler Algier and Najee Harris at running back last week, so, I think I got some areas. I got some areas I could stand to improve in. But no, so all these guys, Ferguson, he's up at 41% right now. Musgrave's ownership has been going down, but I feel like people definitely aren't watching the Packers. He's getting looked at a lot.
Wide open touchdown was missed by Jordan Love.
Exactly.
In the first half.
He loses his footing sometimes, but I feel like there's going to be a regression to the mean, and a positive touchdown regression coming here with Musgrave. He definitely gets looked at. He gets separation. He lines up like a big wide receiver off the line of scrimmage sometimes. So I still like him.
And stuff too, where it's like almost a guaranteed 3 targets or opportunities for him to get 30, 40 yards, which is all you need when you're talking tight end 12, 13, 14. The Kelsey one's interesting. Somebody asked about George Kittle too. Like if you can get one of these waiver wire guys, I would always ask managers who are starting Fryermuth or Dallas Goedert, hey, I got a guy on paper that looks great. What do you want from him? And if they are willing to be kind of aggressive in trading for the Kittles or even Mark Andrews of the world, that's another guy I'm trying to sell a little bit. I would do so because I do like. This
I mean, to be clear, I'd have to get a very outstanding Kelsey offer. I love having that luxury, but we'll see. Maybe we can make something happen.
Completely fair. So from a streaming defensive perspective, who do you have, Jake, while I tape a few of these questions?
Well, the surprise thing that I saw here was that the Browns were only 46% rostered. And the Browns have been absolutely dominating on the defensive end of the ball in all of their games this year. They have been a very tough team to score on. Maybe not crazy in the defensive touchdown area. And a streamer this week, they do play the Ravens. At least they're at home. But they do play the Ravens, and I think Baltimore is a solid enough offense. I mean, they didn't do all that great against the Colts, and the Ravens do have an injured backfield situation. But of course, Lamar Jackson is their main ball carrier. But I think the Browns are an excellent rest of season option. So they're the first one that you're typing in just because you like them rest of season, not necessarily this week, but still startable this week. I mean, Myles Garrett is an absolute stud and is going to continue to make big plays happen, and that ups the ceiling for the Browns. The other one I put down here, now listen, I don't love this at all, but it was a real tough week for streaming defenses. I'll just say that right off the bat. Yeah. Chances are you're drafting the defense, or you're starting the defense you drafted or recently picked up here. But, the Vikings are going to show up on a lot of lists. They're available everywhere at Carolina. Denver's going to show up on a lot of lists, even after they gave up 70 freaking points last week. But it's because they're playing the Bears. That's how bad
Justin Fields and the Bears are.
Yeah, that is how bad Justin Fields and the Bears have been this year. I mean, if there's ever let's just say this. If Justin Fields doesn't do it this week, any Bears fans got to be thinking about blowing that whole thing up again.
Yeah, you look great because you had talked about how you want the Packers over win total compared to the Bears. You had a friend that made that bet for you.
Oh yeah,
W's across the board on that one.
I know I oddly haven't seen them all season yet.
I feel like they just should pay you out now.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm going to ask. I'm definitely going to ask next time I see him. But yeah, the moral of the story here is you're starting the defense that you drafted here. I'm not really there's really no way I'd go pick up Denver or the Vikings despite solid matchups just because they've played so dang poorly. Yeah, they might sneak into a turnover or two, but they'll probably give up 30 points. So I just wanted mostly this whole section is take a look at the Browns, see if they're out there, because the Browns are a very strong defensive unit.
I agree with you. I want to give you a couple of questions first, going back to a top running back call that we had. Do you drop A.J. Dillon or Drake London and use the first waiver wire claim for De'Von Achane?
That's a tough one. I say no. I hold pat. I'm not ready to make that move yet, but I could see wanting to drop A.J. Dillon, assuming Aaron Jones is coming back. A.J. Dillon just has not looked good, but you do have – I feel like the A.J. Dillon's still going to get more touches a game. He's not going to be able to do as much with them. I'm curious to see your opinion on this because I wouldn't drop Drake London either.
No, I'm holding on to Drake London. That's what I said. I am dropping A.J. Dillon. At this point, I feel confident that there is not going to be a pop-off game for him, and I think there are opportunities. No matter if I think Raheem Mostert's a starter, and I do, there is an opportunity that if Mostert were to go down, he has plenty of injury history, this is a guaranteed running back too with the explosiveness he has in that offense. I would pick up De'Von Achane.
Yeah, that's where I was. I mean, I was leaning. If you are going to drop one of the two, I would lean Dillon over London.
This is a tough question, and I think it's fair to say, blah, I don't want to do any of it. But do you play Roschon Johnson, Khalil Herbert, or Ezekiel Elliott in half-point PPR? Again, Ezekiel Elliott, revenge game against the Cowboys from the Patriots, and then the Bears are going against the Broncos in what could be a Brown kind of game for people's attitudes, for fantasy matters. I'm not sure. It won't be fun.
Yeah, I'm actually playing Roschon Johnson, I think.
I think I do too.
Because look at what Denver's defense just did to the running backs. Roschon Johnson has, I will agree, I don't know where our weekly Roschon Johnson shout-out guy is, but...
he's here, don't worry.
He's here? Okay,
talking.
yeah. Yes. I was going to say he has looked better in terms of the eye test there than anybody else in that backfield here, and I think Ramondre is going to be up for a much bigger game than Zeke this week, so it's Roschon for me.
Two more comments here. In a Superflex league, I did suss this out as Superflex. Do you trade Mahomes and get back Devontae Adams, Baker Mayfield, and Jahmyr Gibbs?
Did he say what else he's got sitting at quarterback?
No. I asked what was available on the waiver wire and did not get a response. So I'm assuming not good. But you could pick up probably Jameis Winston or Jameis Winston or maybe even Andy Dalton possibly.
I don't think I'm doing that.
I don't think I was either. I said no, not in Superflex. If it was regular,
because Devontae's already getting frustrated with that situation. Baker's Baker, and I don't trust the Lions to use Gibbs right. So
I'm with you.
On the surface, yes, those all look like great players and a great 3-for-1. And if the rest of your team is completely, just decimated, and you have to make that move, then maybe. But there are small red flags enough with that, and the value of Mahomes in Superflex is absolutely insane.
Yeah, I agree. And then final question, do you trade Derrick Henry and Brandon Ayuk, who missed Thursday's game but should be back healthy, for CeeDee Lamb and Alvin Kamara?
I want the CeeDee Lamb and Alvin Kamara side, I think.
That's a really hard
This
spot.
might be your last chance to jump ship on Henry while you can.
Yeah, no, I agree. I
own Henry in a couple of leagues. And if I got an offer similar to that, I would be willing to unload. Yeah, it might make me look stupid, but I'd rather cut bait early than have him suck up my starting lineup spot the entirety of the year, dealing with turf toe, playing 40% of the snaps. He used to lead the league in broken tackles. I don't know the exact stat, but I don't think he's forced one missed tackle all year long. Something's up there.
So I think you're going to be able to get Kamara cheaper in a couple of weeks. Especially if Derek Carr is not playing, because I don't think Jameis Winston's checking down much. But I'm not certain about Brandon Ayuk. I mean, I wrote about it in the RotoWire magazine that he was probably one of my biggest fades as 4th or 5th round value. Maybe look awful in week 1,
yeah.
But since then he hasn't been super involved. The Niners' offense is so good though, and Dak Prescott isn't always looking at CeeDee Lamb either. There's been inconsistent issues with him too.
Yeah. My principle number one, whenever you're looking at
the best player.
Yeah, best player in the deal. Whenever we're asking expert questions, you know all about this. Whenever we get a thing on Twitter, the very first thing I think of is, okay, who's the best player in the deal? Yep. And I'm automatically going to gravitate to that side if the deal is anywhere close. The best player in this deal is CeeDee Lamb.
It is. Yep.
So
I agree with you.
Go ahead.
I
would take the Lamb and Kamara side.
Yeah,
and Kamara's kind of a crapshoot, but I would be ready to cut bait on those couple of shares here and be finished there.
Cool. All right. Well, that does it for us on this edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast. Of course, back in next week, Jake and Joe edition. A little bit later on, though, Jake's going to be on a bit of vacation, enjoying some Vegas sun.
I'm still here next week.
I said you and I are back next week, but a little bit later on, we'll have a special guest for when that happens. Jake will be enjoying the luxury of Vegas and everything.
I'll be live on the scene watching the Packers in the desert.
Yeah, that'll be fun. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and best of luck to your fantasy lineups.